Reactive training systems.
Somebody comes to you with a conjugate background, and just how you kind of find the intervention for them, just like what's the blend shake out to be?
Well, most of the time, I just, as soon as possible, I try to get rid of any speed work or anything. I don't want that to
Yeah.
be in the program, but like, let's say they love using accommodating resistance, and I think that's a great thing to do. There are definitely enough use cases. They love benching with fans. Good. I do that with some athletes too, even the ones that don't come from a conjugate background. Deadlifting against bands, maybe to teach someone to be patient with the lockout and not ramp or hitch. Um, there are enough ways to like kind of circumvent what they love and then still make it like useful and applicable to what they actually want to do. Um, because of course the accommodating resistance comes from an era of equipped lifting. Um, but yeah, I feel like there's still enough use cases for it with raw lifters in general. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good low hanging
Mhm.
fruit. It's so interesting to me, like just how that system is thought of, and how it's used. And I suppose I shouldn't take us too far down like a conjugate rabbit hole, but like that seems sensible to me, and as a starting point for most of the people who we end up working with, which are, um, I think most people are going to find some utility in probably making the speed day or whatever a bit heavier than, at least heavier than the way it's written in the magazines and whatnot. It seems to me like the people who find utility in that are uh, people who can end up a bit beat up and basically need a lighter session.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
Load
um,
management,
Yeah.
basically.
I mean, like submax work in general is still useful. And I think that's one of the things we still overlook sometimes.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's a thing that it's just interesting to see, like the ebb and flow of some of those tendencies, right? Because on one hand, like I'm not familiar with if you necessarily use protocols that are like the sub 5 RPE category, um, but I mean, that has a lot in common with you know classic West Side style speed
Mhm.
work. Even though you may, like, some of the details might be different. And in the magazines they were writing about like 10 sets of 3, but you know I've talked to people who've been there and they experienced it differently. Well, sometimes it was fives, and sometimes it was, you would do a heavier 5x5 or whatever. Different gyms would run that in different ways too.
Mhm.
So I don't know. There's just a lot of variability, and it comes back to the same thing, which is just like, hey, let's solve the athlete's problem. If we're having problems with recovery, then maybe don't do things that beat them up so much. If we're need to put on size, maybe we need to do some things that help you put on size, things like that.
Mhm. Yeah.
Sometimes the answer is really common sense, and
Yeah.
this might turn into like an SBD specificity discussion now, but Jochen and I have worked for some time together, and where he was my coach, and I kind of pushed the baseline strategy onto him. I was like, hey, let's do high frequency SBD. It sounds like the complete opposite of what like you would intuitively tend to do in a situation where you have an athlete that deals with a lot of back stiffness, doesn't really recover from the bare minimum of doing deadlifts. Like, hey, let's just see what happens if we just do the complete opposite. And intuitively, like I was like, okay, let's with baseline you have like the heavier top set work, and you pair it with like very light work, and we even down regulated like baseline work even more than like 75%. So it was like around between 60 and 70%, which pretty much ended up being speed work for me. That's what it felt like, at least. So yeah, I thought it was like a good way to manage the loads. I was wondering now, since I know Jochen, you also recently took a course about SBD, like high SBD work. Do you see that this is a trend that repeats with a lot of athletes that you've coached so far, that also doing maybe an high SBD specificity approach, or was it like just like a one case scenario?
No, you started the ball roll. You made the ball roll for everyone, because I think I have 3 other athletes now that actually do like high frequency SBD. I've one woman in particular who does 5 times a week SBD. Deadlifts conventional too. So when she actually proposed it to me, I was like, I'd rather not, but I know you really want to try it. So I'll do my best to figure it out. And actually, she has a history of back pain too, and we haven't had as many issues with the 5 times SBD as we had before. So like, yeah, I did the course from Pavel, the coach of Agata, Shitko, of course. And he was also talking about like how some sessions are just like some recovery sessions where you do some easy work just to get the movement in, basically. And with her, I only have like one squat session that's actually very light and one deadlift session that's actually very light. But for the most part, she does 4 pretty heavy sessions, and she just eats it up. And she really does well on it too, because she's the one that actually pushed me to do more. She still felt like she needed more, and every time I was like, okay, you're not in pain, so we can try it. But I'm always like this, like super careful if there's like this like sliding meter, like I'm just like trying to hold it back while she's just like trying to yank on it. um and yeah, it's going really well. Like her deadlift response to intensity doesn't make any sense to me, but it does. Her squat, it kind of does make more sense that she responds to intensity in my head. But it's been, yeah, you were the first one, but you weren't the last one, and I guess some people will keep pushing that narrative, and especially if Agatha keeps crushing it, it's just gonna become a mainstay. Like, she started doing 7 times a week SBD. I guess the next step is 14 sessions a week, where she does twice a day. I don't know. What do you think, Mike, about like the high SBD
So,
stuff, high frequency?
well, I mean, it reminds me that that is a thing. So in 2013, the World Championships, I dropped 2 deadlifts, and you don't win a World Championships by doing that. So the guy, the guy who won was a Bulgarian lifter, Ivailo Christov, who trained for powerlifting like in the old school Bulgarian style, where and even like in the taper week, you know, he was in the training hall of the competition doing like heavy singles twice a day. And someone asked him like, "Aren't you tapering?" He's like, "I am tapering. I usually do 3 times a day." You know.
Wild.
So I mean, the other thing that it reminds me of, you both were talking about how some people have felt better from an injury standpoint doing very high frequencies, and that checks out to me. I remember people talking about daily maxing back when like powerlifting went through its last flirtation with that style of training. And people would talk about similar things like, oh, my bad knee doesn't bother me as much when I'm doing, daily squatting and things of that nature. So that kind of checks out, honestly. Um, I can't imagine that it would be that way for all injuries, but um, it also kind of lines up with how we uh, do like aggressive reintroduction from injuries as well. Like you have somebody who tweaks their adductor or something like that. There's nothing, major and no like underlying damage that really needs to heal, right? And once you come out of that acute phase, you're like, well, I'm going to do a reintroduction period. I'm going to ramp things back up. And of course, this always seems to happen just near competition too. So I just went through this with a couple of lifters actually, and coming into competition, had a minor injury a couple weeks out, get through that acute phase, and we're like, okay, 2 weeks to go. We're gonna do this like super. We're gonna ramp up as fast as we can because that's all the time we had. We can't go any slower. So you go from one plate on the bar and then step up in increments, training the provoking lifts pretty much every day, and then it's been my experience that often enough, of course, it's got to be the right situation and all the caveats apply, but often enough we do something like that and it works out, so all that I guess is just to me saying these are like other avenues that we've arrived at a similar approach of like high frequency stimulus on a given tissue, as long as it's not too much in any one dose, is seems to be maybe helpful. So
Yeah, well, I was actually talking about that with one of my athletes because his back is hurting, and it's something that has bothered him in the past, and it just seems to go away randomly. But right now it's fairly intense, and like one of the things I like to do is, like, let's say you have like back pain, like what's one of the things you say when someone has back pain? Go on a walk, make sure you move as much as possible. But when your back's hurt, you don't really have a way of walking with your backs. You can walk on your heads, but your backs aren't gonna feel great afterwards. Um, so I felt like,
maybe too much
yeah,
intensity.
exactly, especially if you're heavier. No, but and that always, like, because I'm someone that has experienced a lot of back strain in the past as well, and I always felt like there was like something missing, and I just started doing like extremely high rep, like one and a quarter and a full rep of cable fly, so really exaggerating that lengthened position. And I feel like from a movement variation standpoint, because benching, we're always trying to be as efficient as possible, not the biggest range of motion, just being the strongest we can be. And sometimes we get into a rut of like only staying in that range of motion. And I felt like that was like my way of walking for the pecs. It just made me think of what you were talking about.
Yeah, that I apologize in advance, but that makes me think of like again like an old school West Side concept of they used to call them extra workouts, where they would, like, outside of the main training sessions, they would do like these 15 to 20 minute. At least they would write about it. I'm not sure who actually did them, but um, like they were supposed to be like 15 to 20 minutes extra sessions. And of course, I read it about this in the magazine, so I definitely did it for a period of my life. But it could be something simple, like you throw a band over the top of a doorway and do 100 tricep
Yeah.
push downs, and and like looking back on it, like, is that really stimulating? I don't know. Like, I'm not sure how close to failure you were getting on any of this, but um, it was. I don't think it was meant for that
Yeah.
either. I think it was meant more for like just what we're talking about here. Like, it's movement, it's increasing blood flow, so perhaps there's a recovery benefit to it. And maybe it's just a little bit of extra volume, and maybe that stuff adds up over a long enough time period.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people still do those 100 to 200 rep sets of like the door extensions. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a classic one.
Yeah, right. Hey, let me tell you something that I know about you. Your lifting is important to you. It's probably one of your biggest priorities. And for people like us, nothing compares to the feeling that you get when you set a new PR. That feeling of being the best that you've ever been, of doing something that you've never done before. This is what we're all after, and it's also what RTS specializes in. Getting you the absolute best program possible so that you can hit new PRs and reach your goals. We call it radically individualized training, and we're really good at it. Whether we need to account for busy schedules or equipment limitations, or precisely turn the dials and get the details of the program just right, we have the tools and the experience to guide your lifting to the next level. To us, coaching is all about leadership, relationship, and creative problem solving. A coach should be poised to help you make tough decisions about training and competing so that you can continually grow in your development. And of course, a coach should be a first-rate problem solver, especially when it comes to your training, technique, and strategy. Now, all this has to be built off of a really strong, professional coaching relationship that emphasizes trust and respect. Additionally, RTS coaches are not on an island. We have a strong network of professionals to reach out to, so if you find yourself in need of some specific expertise, say in the realm of nutrition or injury management or sports psychology, there's a deep expertise available there too. For more information, go to store.reactivetrainingsystems.com and click on coaching. That's store.reactivetrainingsystems.com, then click on coaching. Hope to see you on the team soon.